Hi everybody. Well, thanks everyone. We just wanted to provide an afternoon update as we continue to monitor the cyclone which is approaching the coast. This afternoon I just wanted you to hear operationally where we are heading with things and just to give you an update on some key issues. But Matt from the Bureau will continue to show the modelling that shows the system tracking towards the coast. The Acting Commissioner will talk about some of those logistics, but I also wanted you to hear from the Commissioner of the Queensland Fire Service, which is doing an almighty amount of work in pre-positioning, and Jake Elwood from the Reconstruction Authority is joining us because I want to stress to Queenslanders that whilst we are focused on the response, we are also preparing for the recovery. And it's important that if you do your bit, we can recover and we can recover strongly. And the things we are doing to put those systems in place will make all the difference. We've just had some fresh satellite modelling from the Bureau that has just arrived. The system is currently 240 kilometres east of Brisbane. It is continuing to move towards the coastline, and Matt from the Bureau will outline that. Again, that crossing window remains late Friday but into the early hours of Saturday morning, but we will continue to update you as that occurs. It remains a Category 2 cyclone, and with that comes some real challenges. And we spoke about those 4 challenges this morning: waves, wind, rainfall, flooding. A flood watch remains in place from the Mary River all the way down to the Gold Coast border, and I'm really urging people to make sure that they know the website, which we repeatedly talk about, and that's disaster.qld.gov.au. The system is starting to pack a bit of a punch, and we've got a few wind gusts that have been recorded. There was a wind gust which was recorded of 96 kilometres an hour at Cape Morton a little while ago. One at Double Island Point of 82 kilometres, and on the Gold Coast Seaway a recording of 80 kilometres an hour. Those winds will intensify, but it shows you that the system does continue to track towards the coast, and it continues to provide some challenges with the wind speeds. Rainfall in the last 24 hours, 184 millimetres at Upper Running Creek, 114 at Springbrook, and parts of the Sunny Coast got 77 mils. This system will provide a challenge across those 4 key areas, but if you do the preparation, it is a system that you will be able to handle. And we are doing the preparation to show Queenslanders how important it is that you do get ready. And I have to say, overwhelmingly, the response has been remarkable. And particularly in the last 24 hours, there has been a real awareness. And I do want to thank Queenslanders for the way that they have responded. And I know as a result of many people who have done our work for us in going to reach out to vulnerable people, to go and reach out to colleagues at work, to speak to neighbours, that has made all the difference. And some of the commentary that we're getting back suggests that this really has been a great effort across the board. Just a couple of operational things from me. There's been over 700 requests from SES for assistance. The vast majority of those around preparation around the home, particularly sandbagging. If you are vulnerable, if you are unable to assist yourself, 132 500 is the number for the SES, and they'll continue to do that work. Door knocking continues in those areas that have been identified by local government, and I'm talking about the storm tide area, but also some of those other low-lying parts. Please familiarise yourself with that. If you go to disaster.qld.gov.au, all of the local governments have their disaster dashboard there. With one click, it'll take you onto your council, and on there you will get the information around those maps, and with that you can make an informed choice about where you are. Have an evacuation plan, and the best one of those is, can you go and stay with friends or family? It's the most comfortable place, it's the safest place. For those who can't, I stress that we continue to see the councils gear up to provide refuge centres. There are currently 26 that have been identified across the area, and we thank Council for mobilising those, and we sincerely think that is a valuable service. I spoke this morning about those vulnerable Queenslanders, those homeless who are sleeping rough, and as we speak right now, we have staff from housing again on the ground going to notify them that there is options available for them. If you wish to report that and assist someone who you see may need help, I mentioned this morning I'd get that number. It's 1800 474 753. The work also continues across those aged care providers, and we've been heartened by the feedback we've got from those aged care operators as well as the local governments in that area. I want to talk briefly about some of the additional resources, and it's really particularly important that you hear from the contributors who will be coming after me. But SES Police, Fireys, we have swift water rescue crews who have been pre-positioned in areas where swift water rescue may be necessary. Energex, and Peter this morning outlined how we continue to drive those numbers. They are actively trying to reconnect some of those areas that have lost power where it remains safe to do so. But once the system does get closer to the coast and those winds and rain become more intense, those crews will be waiting, pre-positioned, to get out there the moment that they can. And they have those people to work with to make sure that vegetation is cleared, because often that is the greatest impediment. So all of that is ready to respond. And the safest place for you is to be in your home, obviously, after that system goes through. Community recovery hubs are also being planned. They are a one-stop shop where people can go in and get assistance, which is why it is vital as part of your preparations, get all those key documents that you have them in one spot. If you do need to evacuate as part of that plan, grabbing those make it so much easier. But regardless, it's good to keep in one location at a time like this. Again, there are 1,030 schools that are closed and will remain closed tomorrow. We'll continue to assess into the future, and we'll update people as to what that looks like after the system goes through. But all that information is on the disaster.qld.gov.au website. You can Google School Closures Queensland as well, but that will continue to be available. Finally, the 4 key challenges remain, and that remains our focus. And we want Queenslanders to remain engaged in it. There are waves, there is wind, there is rainfall, and there will be flooding. But none of those challenges are insurmountable. And I have every faith in the work that has been done to date. I have every faith in the capability of our team to respond, and I know how great Queenslanders are at recovering after events. I'm going to hand over to Matt. G'day, Matt.
Thank you, Premier, and good afternoon. Tropical Cyclone Alfred remains a Category 2 system and is currently 240 kilometres east of Brisbane. It is moving west at around 7 kilometres per hour towards the southeast Queensland coast as we speak. We already covered the fact that TC Alfred moved quite erratically overnight last night, and that has delayed the forecast for it to move towards the coast. We're still expecting the centre of the system to cross the Bay Islands very late on Sunday or in the early hours of Saturday morning, and then push across the bay and into the mainland areas during Saturday, with the most likely track for the system moving between the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast. The system is expected to impact the outer edge of the Bay Islands as a Category 2 system, with average winds near the centre of around 95 kilometres per hour and gusts possibly reaching up to as much as 150 kilometres per hour. And again, these will be concentrated around the southern flank of the system. A tropical cyclone warning remains in place from Double Island Point to south of the Queensland-New South Wales border, and coastal hazards for large waves and abnormally high tides, as well as severe weather, which covers off on the heavy to locally intense rainfall, are also current. I'll work through a few of the impacts. We've already seen damaging wind gusts on those exposed coastal locations, with the outer Moreton Bay area receiving gusts above 90 kilometres per hour, which is the sort of damaging wind threshold that we use. Those winds are expected to continue increasing as we move through today, and then continue increasing through Friday as well. The potential for destructive winds, so those gusts up to 150 kilometres per hour, are expected on those exposed coastal locations as Tropical Cyclone Alfred approaches and crosses those Bay Islands late on Friday and through Saturday. Large swells and powerful waves have been observed along the Queensland coast for several days now, and we are seeing inundation and extreme wave heights. We've recorded waves of 12.3 metres off the Gold Coast So those extreme waves are causing hazards to the coastal areas. TC Alfred is also expected to produce a significant storm surge around the southern side of the system. This means that as the system crosses, sea levels may be 0.5 to 1 metre above the normal highest tide. And in fact, the really exposed locations around the Gold Coast and the Redlands Southern Bay area, it is possible to see storm surges up to 1.5 metres. We're starting to see some of the heavy rainfall push across the Gold Coast and then stretch up through the scenic rim along the Bay Islands and into Brisbane. On the current radar imagery, you can see the banding moving around the cyclone. Again, we expected that to continue through this evening and into Friday, with daily rainfall totals possible of 300 to 400 millimetres, stretching through Friday and into Saturday. This could mean event totals up to as much as 800 millimetres. This heavy to intense rainfall is expected to produce both flash and riverine flooding. And we do have flood watches current for minor to major flooding across the Mary River, the creeks and rivers of the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, the upper and lower Brisbane River catchments, as well as the Logan Albert and the Condamine and McIntyre rivers. Tropical cyclone, as I said, remains a Category 2 system. It is moving slower than we expected, and it did move slower overnight last night. But I reiterate that it's still moving at 7 kilometres per hour towards the southeast Queensland coast, and we expect it to continue to do so. Those hazards around the wind, the rainfall, storm surge and flood risks remain, and we will see those pick up as the system approaches. The movement and the strength of Tropical Cyclone Alfred as it approaches the Bay Islands and then moves across towards Brisbane will be extremely complex. And the Bureau will continue to monitor the satellite imagery, the radar imagery, as well as that modelling information, and update our warnings very regularly. So I urge the community to stay up to date with those regularly updated warnings on the Bureau app and the Bureau webpage, and stay alert for that updated messaging from emergency services. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I spoke this morning about the flood risk, and we've seen those flood watches remain in place from the Mary River all the way down to the Gold Coast. As we've heard, the Bureau is forecasting rain up to 800 millimetres in some of those places over coming days. I just want to say this is significant rainfall that won't only cause flash flooding in the areas that, of the most impacted areas, but prolonged riverine flooding, and it's important that we are now preparing for this potential rainfall. We're currently working with our local councils regarding the at-risk areas from the flooding, and a number of these councils have already posted modelling up on their dashboards, similar to what they've done with the storm surge modelling. Can I say our riverines, our creeks are very wet and will respond very quickly to intense rainfall as it falls. The emergency services are prepared, they are pre-positioned and they are able to respond, but it's now important that communities understand their risk and start to putting plans in place, not only for the cyclone approaching, the wind, the storm surge, but also for flash flooding and riverine flooding over the next few days, should they be impacted by these events. It's important that we plan just like we've done before, and I already know that people have started sandbagging for flooding, not just storm surge, but we can do the real simple things now if you are in a flood at-risk area, such as lifting your important items, your furniture from low-lying areas in your house and lifting them to higher ground, putting your valuables in a waterproof container so that you can take them with you, valuables, passport, driver's licence, credit cards, and then make sure you have your emergency kit and that you have a plan in place to be able to leave should that flooding occur in your area. And finally, can I just urge people over the coming days when we'll see this rainfall fall, please don't drive through floodwaters. This at-risk behaviour puts yourself, your family, but also our emergency services workers at severe risk when we have to come and rescue you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. The Queensland Fire Department's done an immense amount of planning and preparation in order for the crossing of TC Alfred. We're very familiar with cyclone and flood response, however, we're not complacent in our readiness. All our arrangements are in place and our preparations, and we are already very well prepared to respond. We've pre-deployed additional personnel from across Queensland into southeast Queensland communities, in addition to the significant resources that we already have across the impacted or predicted path of this event. We've established 23 swiftwater hubs with specialist firefighter rescue teams, swiftwater rescue teams, to provide immediate response and capacity across those impacted communities. We've all got an additional 50 locations where first response or initial response to swiftwater rescue can occur to support communities and community response. Fire and rescue crews also stand ready to respond to any other call types that may come up through the course of this event. Beyond response, we're also very much focused on supporting early and rapid recovery of communities. So we've got very much a great deal of planning and preparation has gone into being ready for washout support, rapid damage assessment in order to gain a good understanding of the impact of the events, create that damage assessment that informs further response from other agencies, but also to support debris cleanup, washouts, and some of those other elements that communities need and are essential, and that will be done alongside our State Emergency Service colleagues. We do have hundreds of Rural Fire Service Queensland and Fire and Rescue Service staff and volunteers ready to respond when it is safe to do so to support that recovery. So they're in place and ready to respond as and when conditions are needed. We are ready, but I do ask you all to please heed the warnings and advice that authorities provide and ensure that you make good decisions through that process. Thank you.
My name is Jake Elwood. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. The Queensland Reconstruction Authority was formed in 2011 in the wake of Tropical Cyclone Alfred and the southeast Queensland floods, and has been supporting communities in recovery ever since. And I would say now that we are still very focused on making sure that the recovery with the northern flooding is going on. We are with communities all the way through the recovery process. It has been great to see the preparation that has gone on within the community, and I've got to say, having seen this time and time again, those that are prepared definitely bounce back better after an event. There is no doubt about it. Now, at the moment, obviously, focus is the response. Response is the focus at the moment. What will happen in time is that some communities will be in response, others will be in recovery. And so we are ready for that transition, and we'll make sure that there is no daylight between response and recovery. That is vitally important for the community. Now, in terms of recovery, the things that we look at, and I guess the process that we go through, the first is the cleanup. It's vital because families, individuals, they can't move on until things are cleaned up. And we saw wonderful efforts by the SES and the Queensland Fire Department to get that cleanup done so well in the north, and it will again happen here. And I note that we have already activated 12 councils from the Fraser Coast to the Gold Coast to make sure that we are ready for that cleanup. Then we undertake damage assessments to fully understand the damage, how many homes have been moderately, severely or have minor damage, so that we can support community through the recovery process. Then there is the emergency works to make sure that roads or other things that have been damaged are functional and safe to use so that communities can move on. And then we get into the deeper reconstruction. And of course, as always, we make sure that we emerge from these stronger than when we went into it. The Queensland Reconstruction Authority is here for the long haul. We are side by side with community through the process that is recovery. For some it can be short, for some it can be longer, but we will be there side by side, step by step, every step of the way.
Thanks, Jake, and thanks for the work of your team in North and Far North Queensland as well, mate. Time for a couple of questions.
In terms of bridges and roads and things like that, when do you think they might start being closed?
There are two components. One is those assets that are owned by the private sector. They'll make their mind up. Assets like the Gateway Bridge. They do that based on when wind speeds reach a certain velocity. From our point of view, we'll do all we can to keep roads and bridges open as long as we possibly can, because we want emergency services and essential personnel to be able to still drive. Now, we also want the community to be sensible about it, and we'll give you all the information. And as the system gets closer, and as we clearly know, that system is heading in our direction, and it's expected to cross land somewhere, into the early hours of Saturday. And we'll keep updating you as that information comes to hand. But we will do everything we can to keep people with the information as to when it is safe to be on the roads. And if you don't have to be driving, take the time to be at home and fortify your home.
Some of the council-run refuge centres are requiring ID for people who arrive there to sign in. Imagining it's a bit of a rush to get out of home. Do you support that? Because you'll be turned away. Well,
let's talk to the councils about it. We've got an afternoon hookup. Thanks for raising it. Look, I want anyone who needs help to get help, and it's an important time to do that, and I'll raise that this afternoon, so thank you.
Mr Premier, there's countless videos doing the rounds of people going out into these tidal surges and surfing big waves. What's your message?
Well, we want people to stay safe, and so does your family. Your family wants you to stay safe as well. So, look, so often during these events, it can be, you can experience loss of life from people doing things that they otherwise wouldn't normally do. This is the time to be sensible. This is the time to do all you can to be with your loved ones and make plans and do the little things right. And we're just asking people just to be sensible in the way they conduct themselves. And the best way we can do that is explain the dangers and put forward the risks and continue to do that. And I just really want to see people stay in one piece. We want to see people be safe. And there is no doubt there are challenges across all manner of everyone will experience some form if you're in that zone, whether it's wind, or whether it's waves, whether it's rain, whether it's flooding, or a combination of them. They're the challenges you've got to deal with. Don't go putting yourself in harm's way in the process.
Just for clarity with the SES calls, it was 1,300 requests at this morning's press conference for the past 24 hours. That 700 figure, is that news?
That's today, yeah.
So now 2,000 requests.
Yeah, and look, I want to give great thanks, and we had Mark here from the SES this morning. They are, in many cases, they're people who volunteer to help their fellow humans, and they are really, really great Queenslanders. And I've been in disasters before where I've spoken to the SES volunteer, or indeed some of our emergency services, and I'll ask them, I'll say, oh, well, how's things going for you? And they'll say, oh yeah, my house has been flooded. And they're there helping other people. And nothing fills you more with a sense of pride and genuine admiration when you hear that. That happened to me just in Ingham just the other day. The fire officer who I spoke with, his house was in one of the lowest lying parts of the district, and he hadn't had a chance to do anything for him. He was helping others. And so we have to be grateful with that. But that shows you the kind of people who make up those organisations.
Premier, do you have any information about some sort of mass hoax text supposedly from Energex sent to people, and any sort of investigation around that?
No, Alex, I haven't. We'll do everything we can to make sure that the information we provide is on time, factual and clear, and that disaster.qld.gov.au is a great point of truth. If it's on there, it's legit.
And there has been some confusion from residents in low-lying areas as to whether they can park their cars in a Westfield and leave it there overnight or something like that.
Yeah.
Have you had conversations with these companies to allow that to happen?
We haven't. Let me answer it this way, Cameron. If somebody takes the initiative to go and put their car into a safe place, I would hope that they are supported in that journey. And we want everyone to be good corporate citizens and good community citizens at the moment. And I'm urging people who know that they might be in harm's way to try and find a way that you can get your yourself and some of your items safely while you can now. And that's why I spoke this morning about this is the window to be able to do that. And then know your plan when the event happens, when that cyclone gets closer to the coast, when those winds pick up, and afterwards when the rain occurs. It's too late when the disaster is underway to then be making a plan. Now's the time to do that.
Just some questions for the Bureau.
Yes, Michaela.
Is there a possibility that Alfred could speed up overnight?
Very low probability that the system will increase in speed. What we've seen over the past 24 hours is that erratic movement, and in fact slightly slower. So that is the main concern, and you're watching really closely the current data to say, the movement at the moment is about 7 kilometres per hour, quite slow towards the west. But if it continues that track, and that's what's in the forecast. But like I said, very closely monitoring that updated information. And as I also said earlier, as it approaches the coast, as it moves across the islands and gets into that sort of complicated area, we will see the system do some unusual things, and that's the case for many cyclones as they cross the coast with that coastal transition.
And just some clarification on two things. Firstly, there's been some confusion, I guess, differing of opinions on the category of when Alfred falls, or makes landfall, sorry. How certain are you that it will be Category 2 and not weaker or stronger?
The current forecast has a Category 2 system. As it just gets to the outer islands off Moreton, it does start to decay. So the strength as it crosses the island is expected to be somewhere between that Category 1 and Category 2. It is too early to say exactly which side of that threshold it will fall, and that it will likely weaken further as it crosses the bay through that sort of more complicated environment, as I said.
And on rainfall, we've had up to that 800 mil kind of figure going around the past couple of days. Because it's slowed down, there's been a bit of confusion there of how it can be the same figure if it does linger as it crosses the coast. Could it be much larger than that?
Sure. So the rainfall is in some sense driven by the strength of the system and how quickly it goes across the coast. And then there's a complicated interaction with the topography, for example, through the scenic rim and those areas. And we know that in these systems there are certain point locations that get very high rainfall figures, and then some that don't see those. It can be highly variable in terms of rainfall. So the current warning talks about 250 to 400 millimetre daily totals. So if we think of that over 2 days and possibly more, then we may see up to 800 millimetres, and some point locations which may even get more than that. But they won't be widespread, those really high values, is the expectation at the moment.
Just one question. Sorry. There's a report of a boy who's miraculously survived being in a caravan. A tree fell on the caravan. You may or may not know about it, but does that give us an indication of the various different risks that people are going to be under over the coming days that you'll have to deal with?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned earlier, the department is very much prepared to respond to any of those call types, but it is an indicator of the threat that is posed to the community. So whether it's wind, whether it's floodwater, storm surge, all of those impacts are real, and people need to take heed of those and make appropriate decisions and put themselves in the right place to do and manage through the crossing.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Don't have a